Hey guys, it's Giovanni here,
Ellie here from Saucy.
and Saucy is a supply chain and manufacturing company. We pretty much help e-commerce brands develop, manufacture their products overseas, and we take care of the entire process for them. We just want to quickly talk to you about, I guess, the differences in domestic versus overseas sourcing and suppliers. What is an advantage of domestic sourcing?
You've got a lot more visibility. You can just rock up to don't rock up, but you can go and visit your supplier. You can see how they're producing the products. You can speak face to face with the people, the technical people in the factory. So yeah, you've got a lot more, I guess, control and ability to pop in, and the communication is a lot clearer.
There's a lot more accountability because you're calling up someone. I think doing business face to face, and I think everyone in Australia really cares about their reputation and the way they're perceived. So there's more accountability there as well. I guess you could say production times would be stuck to a lot easier. There isn't any sea freight or shipping times, right? So unless your goods come through air freight, which not many do, sea freight is generally 3 to 4 weeks.
Saves you time.
You're saving a month, realistically. So if you've got a really high turnover, quick product and you need stock always urgently to draw down on, then it might actually be more advantageous to manufacture domestically for it or work with domestic suppliers.
You have better protections. You actually have, under the Australian or the legal system that you're in, you get so many more consumer protections when you purchase something. It's almost like guarantees.
The other one is just protection around payments as well. So you're paying someone domestically in a domestic currency, so you're not worried about foreign FX. If the US dollar goes up 5%, does that mean you lose 5% of your margin? It's pretty safe to be paying someone domestically in Australian dollars as well. I guess you have that confidence, and I think it's a little bit easier, to be honest, to get payment terms domestically as well. So you might be able to get a 30-day payment terms after goods are finished, and that could really help with your cash flow as well.
So there are all the advantages. What are the disadvantages? The first one, and probably the biggest reason, is there's the lack of the industries locally. So for the particular product or category you're in, there just might not be that established manufacturing industry domestically to be able to get it at a really good price, to be able to compete in your market. That's probably the biggest one.
We're talking about manufacturers. Of course, you can buy from a supplier, and the supplier is someone who's just buying from overseas anyway, so we won't get too caught up in that. Yes, you can buy from someone. A good example is like Bunnings, right? You can buy a product from Bunnings cheaper than you can buy a whole container from overseas, because Bunnings has such extraordinary buying power and they're able to drive the cost down. So we don't want to focus too much on suppliers, because suppliers are people buying products most likely overseas as well. Wholesaling. We're talking more about the manufacturing opportunities here. The other is price, and it's unfortunate, but it does cost more to make a product here. There's a few reasons for this. One is everything from all the operational costs are more expensive. So rent here for a factory is probably going to be 10 times more than rent in a factory in China. That's just one cost. Then you take in salaries. Someone's wage here is going to be 4 or 5 times more expensive, if not more, than someone in China. The cost of raw materials. If we don't have the access to the raw materials for the product, you've got to import those raw materials from overseas. Again, that's another cost. So unfortunately, what we see is it does cost more to make products here locally. And unfortunately, consumers are not at the point yet where they're happy to pay potentially twice as much for their products. And that is one of the biggest, I guess, sore spots for manufacturing locally as well, is it isn't just as competitive as much as we want it to be. And I think the government needs to get more involved and to support domestic manufacturing through grants and resources, which I know they are trying at the moment, but until that really comes into effect, it still isn't going to be as viable as going overseas.
Another disadvantage is potentially the longer development time. In a country like China, there are in excess of 1 million factories. In a country like Australia, in your particular category, there might only be a handful of producers who can make your product. So it's a lot more, they're a lot busier. So that, for you to get an order with them, to have a production run, they might push you out for a 3 or 4 month lead time, or a wait time, or to develop, to go back and forth sampling or developing your product, if it's a cosmetic product or whatnot. It might take a lot longer for you to actually get to market and start selling your product than if you were to do it overseas. It's a lot more agile.
what would you say some of the advantages are for overseas?
Probably the biggest one is the cost benefit of manufacturing overseas. The labour cost is quite a lot lower. Their access to raw materials is quite a lot closer. Their scale is a lot bigger.
The other thing, as Ali said, is there's more opportunities. So like there's more development of new technology potentially within those markets as well because they're more competitive. What you see is Chinese suppliers don't actually like to compete against each other. They work actually quite well together. That's why they've built manufacturing hubs. So, for instance, Shenzhen's a technology area, or where a lot of technology products are manufactured. The reason for that is two things. One is they buy from each other. So one person might make the processor, the other person might make the microchip, the other one might make the Bluetooth receiver. And because they're purchasing so many of the same components and parts, they're able to drive down and I guess work collectively to make the unit costs of all the products cheaper as well. So I guess other countries or overseas sourcing, I know Vietnam's doing this as well, is they're making hubs of manufacturing to drive down the product costs and for the factories to actually work together and to get the most out of working together as well.
Yeah.
I guess there's also now the advantage for overseas suppliers is platforms like Alibaba, services like a sourcing company, they're able to be reached where maybe 20 years ago it's just not possible. You had to jump on a plane. Right now that's not even possible. And you're kind of rolling the dice to know who you're working with. But I guess now through services like Sourcey and services like Alibaba, manufacturers, there's the opportunity to work with them a lot easier as well, which I see as an advantage for sure.
Yeah, really accessible. Customization or flexibility is really big. So whereas, if there's a cool...
Wait, whoa! Did you get changed?
Did you move? Weren't you just sitting...
Weren't we just there?
Wow. Anyway, as I was saying...
Sorry, what were you saying?
One of the most important advantages as well of manufacturing in China is the flexibility of working with manufacturers. Domestically, you might have manufacturers who are so busy, they've got plenty of work in their pipeline, they can almost say no to work. You've got factories overseas that are very competitive, they're so big, they're more willing to make customizations, so you can it's flexible, you can change the color, the size, they're willing to make new molds for you. So I guess there's a lot more flexibility in manufacturing internationally.
So that covers all of the advantages, I guess, of manufacturing overseas. For us, there are still many disadvantages. I guess that's why our company exists, is we either solve, remove, or manage those disadvantages that most people would encounter. But we'll roll through a few of them at the moment. I'd say the biggest one and the one that we take probably the most serious is around intellectual property. Everyone's heard those terrible stories of someone coming up with a great product idea and then a factory in China ripping it off and creating 100 million units of it and selling it and then being absolutely squashed in the process. So for us, it's really important that intellectual property is managed. But without it, I guess the disadvantage is, for someone who doesn't understand how the process of manufacturing works or how the legal system in China works, you are taking a risk by, developing a product, 40 hours of work into it, getting the designs, the prototypes, whatever it is made, and then handing it to someone and saying, okay, I'm going to trust you to do the right thing with it. That to me is a huge disadvantage that there is when it comes to manufacturing overseas. I think the other thing is the legal system in China is just different to what it is here. NDAs work here, where in China it's called a triple N agreement. So just understanding the differences between their legal system and our legal system is huge as well.
Another disadvantage is that can be a lot more complicated manufacturing products overseas. This is in terms of the communication, which just the simple communication of articulating yourself or explaining what you want. With the language barriers, it can make things quite challenging. Some words in English can be misinterpreted by, for example, the Chinese. They might have slightly different meanings or connotations. The other thing is that manufacturing is in itself has an entire set of terms. It's very jargonistic. There's a lot of things in manufacturing, a lot of acronyms, a lot of things that are specific to international trade that you would have to learn that can be very challenging for people who are just product people or marketing people or business people. It comes with its own set of languages. And thirdly, there's cultural norms as well. So the way that business is done is very different to doing business with, a company down the road. So there are a lot of different cultural things that you have to learn and you have to know when dealing with manufacturers overseas. Also, a very obvious one, but there is a longer lead time in manufacturing products overseas typically, and that is the shipping time. So that's something that you don't have to deal with when purchasing domestically. You actually have to transport your goods from China or India or Vietnam. So the sea freight time, which is typically how businesses transport their goods, is the best part of a month. It's 21 to 25 days on the water, and then a week or so of clearance or actually getting it through the ports by land to where you are. So that does add some additional lead times and also impacts to your cash flow as well. So if you need to add 30 days on top of after you've outlaid money before you get your stock, it can have implications for cash flow that you need to consider.
Definitely. Probably one of the last points is around, international payments. It's fine when someone gives you an invoice and you're paying to a Commonwealth bank account, you jump online and you just punch in an account number and a BSB. There's a few things to think about, which is how to send money securely overseas. I mean, there's instances where you get the account name wrong by one letter, or you don't space something, and then your payment's lost for 4 weeks or held, and you're trying to track it down with the bank, and it's with an intermediary bank, and all of a sudden it's just it's a real headache. And the other side is the currencies that you're paying in. So if you're paying, for instance, in USD, let's say your invoice is $50,000, paid a 30% deposit, so $15,000 takes 45 days to be made, and in that time the currency shifted 2 or 3 cents. It doesn't sound like much, but it might be an extra $600-700, maybe more, $1,000 to your bill. So there's the risk there of you're at the mercy of the currency fluctuations and the risk of making those international payments, and some people really struggle with that. PayPal is great, but if you knew the fees PayPal, the fees and the rates that they make, you wouldn't want to put more than a $500 payment through it. So when you're looking at those bigger payments, to be able to manage your cash flow properly, it is a bit of a disadvantage paying an overseas supplier than it is someone locally. So I guess that covers all our advantages and disadvantages. We really do remove a majority, if not all, of these disadvantages when it comes to using our services. So you kind of get the experience and value of working with someone locally, but then you get the benefits and price savings, the opportunities to develop products, work with great factories, working with us as well. So if you are someone who's starting a serious brand or an established brand and you're looking to find new factories or looking for new countries to potentially source and manufacture in, and you want that control of your supply chain, then definitely reach out to us.
Hell yeah, get in touch.
Cool. Thanks guys.